Yeah, well, it's not an amendment yet. We're still introducing it, and it will be repeated very shortly. And it's also being passed. There should be some sheets around the table that say it too. So, yes. Okay, do you open yourself to the questions? Comments? Okay, other questions for either any of the sponsors? Yes, Representative Wheeler.
So the first question I have is, in my 13, I'm looking at the new copy. We had this good little clause about the state funding 2/3 of the cost. And I was wondering if you could give us information about what the current level is and what it's like so we can see it for the reference.
Without figures that I can present, right now, the cost per pupil that the UW system supports is roughly between 30 and 40%. About a decade, 15, 20 years ago, it was much closer to 2/3, if not 2/3. So this would be, so that's kind of the context without being able to provide graphs. I'd be happy I have that material. I'd be happy to provide it. Sure.
Okay, do a follow-up. Sorry. Do a follow-up?
Yes. This tuition cap, can you expound upon what you think that would look like and what the history of the tuition cap in the state of Wisconsin is, and what other states you maybe have looked toward with this idea?
I will admit I'm not a historian, but the tuition cap is something that ASM has pushed forward last year. It's something that may not have been an official stance, but certainly was in the work of the legislature there. It is something that the state legislature in the past has added tuition cap in the past. Just recently that has expired. Also, just recently, I think it's important to note that for the first time, I believe ever, the amount of tuition per pupil is higher than the amount that the UW system provides in funding per pupil. First time that's happened ever. So that's where we are. We're at a time that, fortunately, we haven't been in the past. Unfortunately,
do you have a follow-up question? I'm sorry, do you have a follow-up question? On point.
Are we questioning about the substance of this legislation or about the amendment?
There has been no amendment made yet. This is just the substance of legislation. Yes. So are there further questions on this legislation? Yes, Representative Warren.
In regards to the tuition cap, that would be simply to freeze the tuition as it stands right now, correct?
In the language, that would state that yes, we would support the tuition cap.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes. How would you see the university keeping up with the rising costs if we freeze the tuition as it stands?
Can you clarify the institution or the system?
You can clarify.
Yeah. Okay. Some of it, like rising healthcare costs, the institution cannot address. The institution does not operate in isolation, so many of the costs not single-handedly going down the big burden. What a tuition cap would do is it would allow consistency for families to be able to responsibly plan financially for the investment of education. It would maintain that our tuition here is over $10,000 a year, which is the highest it's ever been. So I think that recognizing that there are increasing costs and then increased burdens on the institution, it would be irresponsible to ask for a decrease in tuition. It would also be irresponsible for us to ask or to support, like unfortunately some student representatives have, a tuition increase. So a tuition freeze is really something that, like I said, the legislature has done in the past. Something this organization has supported in the past and is really a moderate view.
Your final question?
Yes. As it's worded here, is it implied that this would be definite, please? Or would there be later adjustments?
Can you clarify?
So, as it's worded now, I understand it as a tuition cap being, we're freezing it at current levels indefinitely. Is that how I'm understanding?
Well, ASM doesn't have the authority to freeze tuition. So this statement aligns with our mission of ensuring financially accessible education to students. This would say that we don't support increases in tuition because, well, it actually doesn't say because it's not radical. It simply says we think tuition should stay where it is right now. And the governor's office has the power and authority to ask for an increase in tuition. They have the power and authority to ask for a decrease in tuition. We're saying that right now, that we believe it's, we work within the amount that we're being charged.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, that's your third question. You can raise your flag again for a second speaking to me. So, Representative Seta.
Okay, I guess it's clarification. So tuition cap means we're keeping it at the price it is right now, and that's like the maximum that it can ever be, like, that we support, right? And then, but if it goes lower, it's on it raises the amount of that.
Certainly, this is not to change anyone's personal philosophy. It's not to suggest that ASM has the authority.
Right.
So yes, what it states is simply that we support the reinstatement, I guess, because tuition cap has been something that's been in place for years and years and years and isn't a hot button issue, to be frank. It just says we would support that.
You follow up?
Yes, nowhere in here does it say that we're choosing joint definitely.
Nowhere in here does it say that, and ASM, like always, will work with the decision makers that actually, like the Board of Regents, for example.
Yeah.
This would make clear our belief that tuition is high enough and we don't need to ask any more students than we're already asking.
Do you have a final question? Chair McNally.
Let's close question and answer.
Motion to close question and answer. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of closing question and answer, moving to debate, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay.
And the years of chair that carries. We're in debate. On point.
Will we be having a first vote?
This is a resolution, so it'll be just one vote. It's automatically taken up. So we're in debate. Chair Statter, I believe you have an amendment.
Yes, I do, and I spoke to it. So if you do not have this single page copy, is that a point? No.
It's
Sorry, this single
I'm sorry.
single page copy is the
There we
most updated form. If you do not have that form, the new clause, which should be inserted in line 10, would read ASM supports the creation of a tuition cap, ensuring that University of Wisconsin, ensuring that a University of Wisconsin education is financially accessible to people of all socioeconomic statuses.
Is there a second? Second? Okay. You kind of already spoke to it, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, if there's additional questions, I think.
Okay. Would you like to speak to your second, Representative Bragg?
That's pretty good.
Okay. We're in debate on this amendment. Chair McNally.
Let's call a question.
So the motion to call a question. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of calling a question on this amendment, which says, be it resolved, ASM supports the creation of a tuition cap, ensuring that a University of Wisconsin education is financially accessible to people of all socioeconomic statuses. So, all in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That is so amended. We are back into the main motion and debate. Chair Brooker.
I can't vote, but I would like to voice my incredibly strong support for this. I would love to see this get unanimous consent. This is absolutely what we should do about tuition. It's far too high. It's not get any higher. I'm going to say aye, even though I can't vote.
Chair McNally.
Let's call a question.
Motion to call a question. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Unanimous consent.
The question has been called. There's been a call for unanimous consent. On the objections to unanimous consent on this legislation?
Object.
There's no objection. All in favor of passing the ASM position on UW system funding in the state budget, please raise your placard. Raise them high.
I think
All opposed? Okay, so that passes. 20 to 1. Okay. I would entertain a motion for a 5-minute recess so I can go to the bathroom before we talk about the general budget.
I second that.
Thank you. Any objections to a 5-minute recess? Hearing none, we will reconvene at 8:45. Thank you. Much appreciated.
I need to go.
It just basically is a fancy document. No, it's just basically a document. It's just just don't worry about it. I've been trying.
Voted against it. Voted against.
Voted against. Oh, right. You did, Andrew? I don't actually know.
That wasn't here.
Oh, yeah, it was James.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. These two didn't vote. I think everybody.
I didn't want to get killed. And it was passed anyways. I didn't make my point. I wanted to make an amendment saying. I was
We should change something.
Wait, I was gonna try to make
Okay,
an
this is his
amendment, but they closed.
That doesn't satisfy me.
I was gonna try to make an amendment saying that I wanted the UW fund because there's a programming to pay for this, but that obviously I didn't get a chance to go.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think he actually means tuition cap when he says that. He just says, I don't support.
Like, hey, I'm for a tuition cap of $10,000. That was actually $20,000.
No, you know what's great? They get to put the tuition cap at $1,000.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be where we're at right now either.
But the entire thing was is that.
Yeah. Various things. Yeah, no, I changed it sort of retroactively, like who cares.
Oh, you know what?
I said it was supposed.
I can check out that.
It takes 5 seconds to actually.
Oh yeah, I mean, we could do that too. I just don't know if we can if we've already passed it. Is that these two things?
Objected to it 3 times. What happened to Oh, I must be objecting to it for no reason. Because I will replace it. If it passes with this, I will replace that.
I think it already passed, didn't it? Because it passed last year.
Did it pass?
Yeah, I thought it.
No, it requires another piece.
Didn't we? Oh, not that. At the beginning, wait, no, that's what the consent vote was. It's just that we're passing these two. That's what I think.
He said that it was just so that we put them together. That's what he said.
Okay, well, Katie left.
Yeah, I know. So that's what they did say, and then the
Replacing the sacrifice of organizational wages and manager with duplication. I'm not breaking this.
If you feel free to ask me.
We voted on every living document, so it's going to look really funny because it's going to be a duplication. And then
Yeah.
When we did that consent vote thing on Katie's thing, was that passing it, or was that just saying that we'll vote on it together?
What? you can't pass something during adoption of the agenda.
It wasn't the most legit thing, but
You can't do
it was
that.
consented to no directly.
There need to be a
No,
5
you
second
said,
amendment.
you said even
What?
said
There need
that.
to be a 5-second amendment. Like, I need to make one tiny amendment.
He made a friendly amendment because she was changing the wrong
There's no
part of
such thing as a
bylaws.
friendly
I know those things are friendly, I'm aware.
But, okay, but the idea is that it's literally just a change from I to J, like section.
Then, like, I think that's absolutely acceptable to change that. Like, please, that's,
Yeah.
please, that's
I
so
want to take a picture of all the.
Yeah, I don't know.
No.
And, well, we had to agree to it last time, so, and I guess she forgot of the week. She was all, like, she told me to make a friendly amendment.
Yeah, no, it's not a problem. This is just have that reflection.
Okay.
Yeah. I need to. Everyone got food. I don't know why. You should up shoot presenting your food.
I guess get away. How far did she go to get food?
I don't know. I find
Okay. It's like, I mean, it's one thing if she ran down to Emilio's super fast. It's another, she's like trying to go over something.
Oh my god, those are the best.
I mean, I emailed 4 times that's the questions and I got 0. So I'll make a point of that if people don't want to.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good, are you?
I like that. Where'd you get it?
My basement.
Yeah. High quality custom supply.
She's like going there. She usually presents it.
I can present it.
What's the word? What's the word?
No idea. I can't remember.
I just kind of that's a candidate. Get a gist of it. Do the best I can, right? Regular. That's what it is. That's what it is. Regular. That's it. School responsibility. Fiscal responsibility. Very interesting.
Said that I support the same it wasn't my argument.
Yeah, well. I think that she thinks that because people have different opinions on sustainability, we're not supporting it.
No, the thing is, I just have a guess that this meeting on
I mean, there are some things I like. Colin actually came to like Hal's and he was interested in
Okay, everyone, please take your seats. Self included. I'll take 1 second. Okay, we have a form, correct? Okay, we are on to introduction to legislation C, which is the introduction of the ASM internal budget. So myself and Chair Booker will be in front of all of you answering your questions. And I emailed out 4 times this past week to all student council asking the questions. I met with about 30 of you, so I hope I covered a lot of it. In terms of legitimate questions that you emailed back. We'll see if that holds up. Right. So,
Hey, Chair, you're on Q&A.
and make sure you're not listening to the chair show. Take the gavel, it's a little symbol there. Okay. So, Max, can you do me a favor and check out some of the Okay. So, this is the annual ASM internal budget, and major thank you to Chair Booker for organizing and making it by far the praise budget I've seen in my 3 years here. Very well organized. So I guess just some logistical things to explain. It's about budgets. I'm not an expert, but the best I can. So the one we're looking at is the 2013-14 requested. And the reason for that is because every session ASM constrains or makes the budget for the session following them. So this 2013-14 is from July 1st, 2013 until June 30th, 2014. No, right now we're in the middle of our 2012-13 approved. That's why you don't see actions for this year, because it's still happening. So the most recent actions we have is from the 17th session, which is the 2011-2012 actions. And that is what I typically base the majority of the requested off of, to get as close to action as possible, to try to be as responsible as possible. Overall, I mean, I've said this out a few times, I'm not going to take too long. Overall, the budget, sorry, put on here. We have an additional staff member from Financial Specialist 3 that we didn't have in the budget last year. We also used cost of living adjustments to increase all the stipends and the positions because they're going to be going up no matter what is in our bylaws. We also increased some of these notable things for the budget. The ASM director to $65,000 instead of $55,000, and the idea behind that is to have it be the most competitive position as possible when we start the nationwide search for this position in the spring to fill for ideally at least the next half decade or decade or so of ASM. So even with all of these things, we were able to keep levels almost the same in almost everything, and with some minor trim the fat down to actuals, we were able to keep the budget at only a $16,000 increase, and that's pretty incredible given all of the extra positions and the cost of the adjustments and the programs we have in this budget. That's kind of the general overview. As for timeline, we're going to, I found out it does not specify whether you run it once or twice. This will need to pass the majority, so keeping in line with that, we will be hearing this next week to make amendments, and the following week to make further amendments if people want to, or we can just do it for one meeting, and people decide they can vote on it and approve it. And then at that point, it will be presented by myself to Chair Booker and her branch on November 15th, where they will scrutinize the budget. We'll then come back, and the deadline is as the second semester, but we're going to try to get it done this semester to be as timely and efficient as possible. So with that, I'll open myself up to any and all questions, and I will also, the Chair Booker does as well. She might want to add some points to this.
Well, I guess just to clarify, in case for new people that don't know how this works, I move back there. So back to me. But once the trustee sees it, if the council wants to change anything that SMC changed, you'll need a 2/3 vote to change that. So we get to kind of scrutinize and do what we think is appropriate, then it'll come back here to change anything we have done. We'll take 2/3. So just so that's clear with everybody how that works. And I'm sure SMC members will be willing to meet with people once it gets to us. So I assume they will be. I'll tell them they have to. So yeah.
All right, cool.
For
So,
information,
yes,
this is the budget that was approved by coordinating council.
Yes. I apologize.
all right. So with that, we'll be taking questions. You know the drill. You get 3 questions per turn. You get 2 turns. And also, please keep all questions to questions. No points of debate. You get to debate next week on the internal budget. So with that, are there any questions for the speakers? Ms. Abby, say that.
Cool. Okay. So I'm going to do the whole rest of the game. The N4 co-sponsorship, is there a reason why you're not putting money in that? I mean,
Yeah, we didn't do it last year. They didn't. I guess they didn't need the money. We set it aside and we really never asked for it, so we took it out. If there's plans to actually use that money for next year, like if they want to do the co-sponsorship again and utilize that funding, then I don't think either of us are opposed to co-sponsoring as long as they're going to use it. But we don't want to put $2,000 into it that's not going to use it. So.
Follow up?
yeah,
What was
the N4. Okay, I guess my second question is, can we ask the people who know and ask them if they're going to do that?
I think it's C-Flat. But I think it's C-Flat, the MSP. I'm not 100% sure about that. I sent some emails, I didn't get anything back on it, so
so I don't know if that's maybe their confusion. They really know we have money to sponsor it. So I'm gonna try again to get hold of people before next Wednesday. But yeah, like it's taken out not reflective of we don't want to co-sponsor it. It's taken out reflective of the money wasn't being used. Okay.
Do you have final questions?
Yes. Helping Faith. So we're requesting $400 again, and we requested after 3 weeks. So how do we active already, right? No?
That has not happened yet this year, no. And part of the reason is that was a new line item, so you don't see anything spent because it hasn't been spent.
That's new.
But we just had the last affairs meeting here, so we talked about that. And I think number 12, it will be. So very soon, we have money for it this year. That we
Okay. Okay. Alright. Oh, so
No, you don't. Dr. Gardner.
Yes. So for the coordinating council retreat, the actual spending for last year was $718, and told this year we also overspent that 500 line. So it was the decision to decrease it, or not to decrease it, but I guess to stay consistent with the budget. It's consistent.
Look, a couple things. One is the UR. This is not the greatest practice. We are allowed to spend over slightly because it is the money, if you will. And also, as you and I talked to Kelly as well, and it's kind of been understood that we usually spend up that limit and just a little bit over anyway. So I feel as if we increase the 750, the next year we'll spend 1,000, following we'll spend 1,250, and so on. So if people want to increase, I have no problem with that. But
My personal belief is that shouldn't be being overspent. No line item should be being overspent. What we budget for is what is available. We shouldn't be spending over that. So I think that 500 is an appropriate amount to use. Whether we overspent this year or last year is probably because we haven't been as frugal as we could be with it. But I think 500 is an appropriate amount for a retreat of that kind.
You follow up?
And follow-up for Chip would keeping it at 500 and maintaining that line prevent next year's leadership from going off-site or to off-campus?
I don't think so. I think for what was in an overnight retreat, I think we should make it, we should make it not an overnight retreat and spend
Final question?
Why do you explain the overspending $200?
They were overnight retreats. I don't think that the coordinating council retreat, this is not to knock it. I went to it, but I don't think it needed to be overnight. I thought it was very beneficial and I learned a lot and it was great. I think it could have been done in one day. You can still go off site for one day and I mean we went to Hook Feet, you can go to Hook Feet just during the day, if I'm correct in understanding that. And I think that you can get that for $500 or less. I think it costs the $200 over funding is because of the overnight retreats. When I don't think that they're necessarily needed. That's just my personal opinion. That's why I would have loved to do 500 is because I think that's an appropriate amount to spend. Like I said, though, this isn't my decision. I actually have no vote on this budget ever in the whole process. So, yeah.
Chief Justice Kloppenberg.
Thank you. So, could first of all, you just discuss your overall rationale, how you approach this budget, like what sort of overarching strategy you use arriving at the numbers that you did?
Sure. For some, I went closer to actuals. I discussed almost every single line in the budget with Rich Sterkwitz, one of our financial specialists. For the salaries and stipends, we come in for cost of living increases and all that. For stipends, I predicted for a 2% tuition increase for each of those. Hopefully that doesn't happen as we have just, given our support for a tuition cap. But just looking at the trend that we've had over the last 4 to 6 years, we accounted for that because this year we did not, and we will overspend our salaries and stipends line because of that. For the advertising lines, I tried to go close to actuals, but for all the lines, I tried to go close to actuals, but also leave room for next year's leadership because I'm deciding to score them, which is kind of tough because I don't know what they're going to want to do. But and I believe we've spoken about this that
I don't necessarily, I was considering whether some lines actually needed to exist as well. I don't know if we should be budgeting solely based on predicting what people are trying to do next year. I think we have to take into account, like, should we even put any money into this? You know, I don't think just because it was in the budget means that we always have to fund it. So things can get cut. So.
Chair Wells, can you respond as well?
That's basically exactly the same thing. We're moving together, so.
Do you follow?
Yes, so basically, keeping these in mind with the actuals, why did you choose to have a cost-based budgeting over zero-line budgeting?
Because I didn't feel like I should take anything out of the budget. I feel like that's a decision for student council to make. Student council feels that certain lines are more justified to spend any money in, that they can do that. But for me to take it out of the budget and not give student council the rest of the decision or the opportunity to discuss things like that, I thought was inappropriate.
Your final question?
Yeah, so there's a number of expenses covering just training, whether that's a horse camp. So do you think it's conscionable in these economic times to spend thousands of dollars sending people to a horse camp when these trainings would be done at the free space that we have available on this campus?
I'm going to yield to Both now.
So yeah, I was the one who decided to, well, my venture not with myself, decided to do overnight retreat. Conscionable, absolutely. I thought that it was more than justified. In speaking with previous chairs of ASM, that noted that overnight retreats are beneficial in a way that sitting in one room for 6 hours at a time really aren't. You know, it was a Friday through Saturday, so we left Friday afternoon. We had three and a half maybe hours of sessions and trainings, and we had a lot of time to really get to know each other. And given that this is a leadership team as well, it's very important for coordinating council to collaborate with each other and to get to know each other. We hung out until 3 a.m. and then slept in the cold and woke up. And it was miserable, but we enjoyed it. And we also I'm serious though, we had a lot of fun, and it really made a difference doing the overnight retreat, bonding as a team and a unit, and working together still to this day. So it really helped.
Awesome.
And I would do it again too.
Representative with banner?
So I'm curious why, why you decided to cut it, okay, I guess the first question is, what are the shared governance trainings for? And I can like specify, are they for ASM as a whole, or is it for like shared governance?
It's my understanding it's for shared governance committee in general, so it's really up to the discussion of what it's for. I'm not sure what the $309 80% was used for exactly, but that's up to the discussion of the shared governance chair.
Do you follow up?
I was curious, like, since we're going to be, since we've entered into, like, these actions, or will be, or like, and I'm not really sure where we are right now with this, but there's going to need to be a lot of training involved in going forward and making sure that we have a sustainable, educated body of student leaders. I'm just curious why in that environment you decided to cut, or you decided.
Well, we're absolutely in the environment of shared governance battles, but we're also in the environment of tough economic times where tuition is rising. This broke 10,000, as Chair Stack said earlier, for the first time in Wisconsin's history. So trying to balance the shared governance battles with the battles of economic struggle in general was something we tried to accomplish well. People want the trainings to be increased cellular, and the student council wants. This is just obviously the strong recommendations from the coordinating council. So this body feels strongly that they would like another $150, $200, and that's absolutely a drop in the bucket. We want that. Yes.
Do you have a final question? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. The reason that I figured $300 was appropriate was because I compared my dollar was for food. It wasn't for actually providing the materials or anything like that. I also felt like because we have the general programming and general training line, so that would be fine. However, I'm more in support of taking out the general programming line and splitting that out between the committee programming lines. I feel like having just a general filter in mind, kind of like, okay, we're doing 1 second, before I rather see it split up in between. Then I'll probably do that option next year, just to get that 2,000 is split it between 5, so.
Do you have a final question?
Yeah. I just couldn't figure out how to edit it and like highlight, so I have to, I guess, so yeah, I'm just asking these questions because, like, I wanna know if I wanna add it to it, and I don't mean without just not attacking it, that's what I'm just told that. But I was just curious why there was $5,000, taken out for support for students with disabilities, because I did see that, like, there wasn't money to spend. But I'm curious how we did like how to spend $20,000.
Yeah, so the logic behind that, well, part of it is that there was no money spent, you see the $1 placeholder in the 17th session, is that there was not enough of this outreach, and that's why none of it was spent. So we just keep in mind that, to my understanding, it hasn't been spent at all. So we just dropped it down to $5,000 to 10 grand, and with the assumption that we will do the outreach for it. And just so people know, in general, the support for students with disabilities, the idea behind this for if an organization comes to finance committee or ASM in general, and they have an event where it finds out it's not handicap accessible, they can reach out to the person and the ASM to use this fund to build a ramp for that event. So we still have $10,000 in it, and with the idea that this session and next session will be this, hopefully this usually carry over to inform the Grace Center and other organizations that exist. And also to do that advertising and informing these groups doesn't cost any money for clients. They can send out some additional information, the information sheet.
Representative Rowland?
Yeah, for the ASM recruitment drive, why do you have it at 2,500 when the 2011-2012 actual was 160.7?
I'm sorry, it's scrolling up.
Because the actual for this year will be what was budgeted.
Okay.
So we just knocked it down a little bit so that we're kind of encouraging our future selves to be a little more responsible. The ASM recruitment drive was wonderfully put on this year, but we could have just some copies a little bit more.
I'm sorry, we also, what did we spend exactly,
Yeah.
this fall semester?
I don't have an exact figure, but it's in the ballpark of like 1,300.
Okay, so yeah, so like, then part of the logic too is that it was about like this, I knew figures about there. So we just doubled that and then subtracted by a little bit. The spring is usually much smaller than the fall anyway. People are usually in organizations already, so there's not as much of a heavy hitting recruitment drive that costs as much money. So we kept it 2,500.
Do you follow?
No, thank you.
All right, Representative Gardner. Dr. Gardner.
Yes, so regarding the support for schools with disabilities fund, the advertising, what was your this budget? So this is a question I got a chance to follow up a little bit from the Grace Center and kind of talk to them about that fund. And I'm wondering what your thoughts would be, because we kind of discussed the advertising in that budget, the stewardship in that budget, and that sounds like we've always kind of dropped on that. But if that line of communication were to be established, it would be really, really useful to have the full funding. I think they, in the meeting, mentioned that they didn't anticipate using, say, 15,000 as a minimum, but at least 15,000 would be helpful to accommodate students with disabilities in campus. So would you be amenable to restoring those to 15,000 for that budget line and 2,000 for the advertising in order to further this program that was approved by previous council that the Grace Centers talked about to basically say we'd like to see it sort of.
Did they say they would use all 15? I can start my next question back. Like I'd like to see this same. I'm fine if people want to increase to $50,000, absolutely. Especially with the assertion that it will be used and actually spent to that level, then that's by all means that's our job as student government to provide these services that really benefit students. But as for advertising, I don't know if we need to increase it for this specific thing, please. I mean, I don't know. I know sending an email to bring is free, so I don't know how advertising would cost any money.
You follow?
I would say that I agree. I think making this back up to 15 grand would be, I think that that's very reasonable. I think quantifying how much advertising costs is sometimes
difficult, but I think that $3,000 for advertising is a lot of advertising, considering how much we can actually do for free. I think that can't remember the probably 800, but yeah, what $1,000 in advertising still can give us a lot. In addition to everything we can do for free, I think that that's really sufficient. And we still have the $2,000 in the general advertising line, so if there was a need to do more disability advertising, then I think that some could be taken from there too. They're broken down this way so that each one gets like a fair amount, but I feel like next year's student council can very easily move stuff around there based on need.
Paul?
Yes. Thank you. Do you think, so the problem I think that they have is that over the years, the line of communication that had previously been established was kind of dropped. And there wasn't really a person from year to year that was given that responsibility. So I'm not sure where or how it happened, but maybe within diversity committee 1 year, they stopped building awareness for this. So what would your thoughts be, I guess? And if you feel totally good answers, you'd like to talk to me more about it in person afterwards, but to creating like an hourly position for a student that can look at stewarding that fund and advertising for it, making sure, working with the McBurney Center, I guess, to make sure that that fund is available and the students are aware of it, so they can use it to the best of its ability.
Yeah, I would be against that. I don't think that we need to create an hourly position just to advertise this one thing. I think it already would fall under whether it's the chair of diversity committees or the ASM chair or just, I mean, who knows, even the press office for an outreach argument that could be made. I think we have enough positions already where someone could add the extra 5 minutes of work per week that might take to them already.
One information.
Yes.
If you wouldn't mind yielding to Chair Kidd, I was curious if in the finance committee requirements to get the Ben grant, whether or not it addressed the specifics regarding whether or not the event actually needed to be handicap accessible or maybe like open to all students.
Chair Kidd?
Oh, yes, it is. It needs to be open to all students. So if the location were happened to be inaccessible to all students because of the lack of a handicap entrance, they could request funding as part of, I guess, maybe space window that would allow to take care of that. Maybe they could be tapped into that outside funding. So it wouldn't necessarily need to come from the venture funding.
All right, great. Do you have 5 questions?
On that same point, does finance committee regulate whether groups required to provide assistance for students who are deaf or hard of hearing and send data whatever captions to be available?
It's not necessary. So I would say
Dr. Gardner, do you have final questions?
Point of information,
Yes.
how much money is actually in general, like the 9,000 general training? How much money is in there?
Right now, I believe it's around $6,000 or so dollars.
Is that from allocating money out, or did we spend it?
It was allocated money out, but we do have professional staff who've been providing a bunch of trainings for us for free. All right,
I think I did have the final
do
question.
you have a final question?
Do you feel that, and again, I promise this to the kind of bring this to now, we can answer questions later, but would you say that without this position, if this position would be closed, there's a potential, a large enough potential matter, I guess, that would be dropped again, and that the money would be available because they wouldn't be aware of it? Would you say there's a reasonable risk that may justify putting a position forward that's doing
So, I think that creating another position is kind of just, giving this to somebody else when I think that this could be done easily with collaboration from the leadership next year. I think it really depends on the leadership. We had positions, I guess kind of anecdotal, but in SFC we have kind of living liaisons. Last year they sucked because
it just wasn't done well. This year, leadership made sure that they were done well and trained well. And not to knock you back there, but like it didn't come together last year, and that's not because there was a lack of a position. It's because there's a lack of knowledge about that position. So like this year, this year and in past years, it hasn't been done because people didn't know. I mean, people didn't know it was in their job description to do it. Now, if we make it known, here's this money, here's who's in charge of it, they're gonna do it. I don't feel like the ball is going to be dropped in the future because we're having this conversation about it. I think creating another position and paying that person with more psych fees, there's enough psych fees. I don't think adding another position to the large amount that we already have is necessary when you could have some people collaborate and get this done. I'm not trying to say that we should add any more of a burden to any of the leadership in ASM. You guys are all probably as sleep deprived as I am, so I don't want to make anything harder for anybody, but creating another position just seems unnecessary when I feel like this could get done. I don't feel like you would need to give that position any more than like 1 hour a week, and that just seems kind of, unnecessary.
For information,
On point?
could this liaison person fall under the job description of the student press office hourly position?
I believe it could. Our representative, Maggie.
Yeah, could you talk about the cut to the ASM town hall? And I guess my broader question to that is, are we as a body pretty much hunting on getting an excellent town hall to bring students to talk about issues on campus?
Yeah, so we only spent $24 the most recent update we have, the most recent, line item we have. Oops. Sorry. Last time it was used about $24, and I'm not honestly sure that I think it was $24 and I imagine it was pretty bad candy. I went to it, I honestly don't know. I don't think we need the money to have a town hall. We already have a lot of money here to you guys for these purposes. So $100 is there to have enough money to get some food in the next section. We want to have a town hall to advertise something. But for instance, we just had a town hall put on by Director Gardner and Campus Safety Campaign Committee and Chair McNally. We just had a town hall we did for free. We brought in the VP, we brought in all the residents. We did that for $0. So I imagine we run it very cheaply again.
And we have a lot of like really great resources like the Student Community Center and like our advertising line that we can do something really great without needing a whole bunch of money in a town hall meeting. That reduction is not to say that we shouldn't bring our students to the same depth, we should bring our students, but we can do it for free because we have places like that, and we can go and advertise those things on our Facebook page, which is free, on our Twitter, which is free. I feel like we should absolutely advertise as many as possible, but they don't need to cost.
You follow up?
Yeah. Could you explain the bump in the line item allocation for the student board fair from $1,500 to $2,000?
Absolutely. So Vice Chair Giannopoulos and I met with Barb from C4 and also Lydia, she's an intern. Okay. So the reason we get such fantastic table space was we do the order fair. We get the first 5 tables in there because we are one of the co-sponsors of the order fair. So each semester we've given them $750 to that covers the tables and covers the positions that are paid to organize this event. It was attended by 9,500 students this past fall. So I guess the answer is twofold. One is that it's absolutely in our purview to provide these services, not wait for it to provide these services to students, because it really helps students get involved on campus as part of the mission of ASM. And the second is that the price actually went up to add these tables and also bring more tables. You notice there's some organizations that were actually outside the goal center this year. So we increased, so the cost of tables increased, we had more tables, and in order to keep and ensure we had that fantastic table space, we gave away, I think, 600 pens, and we have over 400 interest cards, where we had a fantastic, you could drive over 80 people, 90 people that came. We need to keep it at 1,500, we increased it to 2,000 just to make sure that it's a continued success.
Your final question?
Yeah. So Chair Berger, you brought up a really good point about how important training was to improving the performance of the accountability liaisons this year. What different parts could you put on excellent training and competency building for each and every one of us here at Student Council for next year?
Okay.
You know, if you feel it's on plan, but, you know, if you want to get attracted, that's fine.
No, yeah, so I guess I can't really speak to that. The meeting that I did this year, all the only costs that we had were for the space that we went to. I took in the training myself, and then, all the returning members of SSC, and then our SSC advisor, who's now our intern, and Sandra, who's doing that. So I didn't actually bring in any outside people. I tried to get you to come in with the sort of that, so I'm still working with that to get some support there. But, so we did it for relatively cheap. I understand that for some things that might not be possible. SSC, I think I hear very many people that I could call, they come train new SSC members on SSC. There are many people who are SSC experts out there, not that I by any means, but I feel like, and I don't know if there are any SSC members here who says your team, but and for me, but I feel like that went really well, and I feel like they were pretty well trained. Sorry, I forgot about you, but I think I could definitely consider training that would cost money, and it shouldn't do with people like doing that with myself, but I guess to answer your question, sorry for that long answer. I don't really have a dollar amount that I can put on it because it really depends what you're training on.
Representative Love?
Yes. Are you aware that they have the same conversation in 16th session about the disabilities funding? It's for support of students with disabilities funding.
I was not there, so no.
Yeah. So yeah. So were you aware that essentially it does seem to happen every year that we have this large chunk of funding that actually exists to provide students who have different abilities access to attend any sort of extracurricular event that happens on campus, meaning not just for event grants and all these things that we already put on, but like, for example, the student wanted to go to a United Council event or to some sort of retreat that somebody's sponsoring, and they are in a wheelchair and they need a van with wheelchair accessibility, which normally the vans that we take don't include this, that they would be able to lend a special van through the McBurney Center, which is the way it was coordinated back in 16th session. That they would be able to talk to the McBurney Center, which would then have access to this money to actually be included in all of the things that we consider part of the Wisconsin idea of like being a badger. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, I knew it wasn't just fantasy grants. I mean, that's available to any student for anything that any other UW student gets to do. So, I mean, I don't think we should put it down.
And I would also like to, if they had that conversation in 16th session, and I know 16th and 17th session leadership SU, obviously, if they had that conversation, I imagine that those discussions and line of communication was had in the McBurney Center, and I don't know why, but I would be very interested to hear why the money was not spent if the communication was there. I imagine it wasn't for lack of interest, but clearly it didn't work out, which maybe speaks to why we're reducing as well. I don't know why they did that.
Sorry. Were you aware that it's potentially because the advertising really never came through? And furthermore, that the fund used to get $25,000, now it's been reduced to $15,000. I'm not necessarily saying that I disagree with the cut of the fund or whatever, because it isn't getting spent, but I do think it'd be interesting to hear your comments. I do think it'd be interesting to hear your comments on why we lower the advertising if the money's not being spent instead of raising the advertising to try to spend that money, try to make students aware of that.
But once again, this can be all done for free. This can be done through email. This can be done through through ASM Student that organizing UC events. If a student has this, they can raise that concern. This once again speaks more to the question and the problem of ASM turnover. We see it's actually a pretty good session for where you see 90% of the room brand new every year. It's closer to 70 this year, which I'm actually really excited about. And also financing and reaching out to organizations that apply and you know. So am I aware of that? I was not aware of the $25,000, but I guess that makes sense that once again it wasn't being used. It was done 15, and it's still not been used. It's done to 10. So as you said, people have known about the line of communication that's been there. It still hasn't been used. So I would like to, before increasing, make sure we do see that sustained interest instead of just arbitrarily charging students with the hope that it'll be used.
Chair McNally?
Yes. So I had a few questions. The first one was.
You were the first person to ask a question. He has not answered.
That's a point of information. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I know that's why that was kind of sorry. So when we talk about for using the money that's in that fund, just so I can know for like this year.
In the to expend any money from the internal budget, you would have to talk to myself, Chair Golowski, or Chair Kidd, and we can work something out.
Cool, yeah, maybe start on that.
Right.
Chair Down.
Yeah, point of information.
Point.
So, concerning this McBurney funding, I suppose you could deal with this as well. What fund does McBurney have at its disposal already to provide access to? I believe they do provide access to vans or to transportation for students to access events. Anyone speak to that? I'm just curious.
So, to my understanding, this was a conversation back 3 years ago in the 16th session, so it may be different now, but the reason why this fund was created was because they didn't actually provide money for students who can have extracurricular events. And the Bernie Center, to my knowledge, exists, so students have equal access to academic and like research on campus. But I could be completely wrong those 3 years ago, so.
Director Brennan.
I can clarify that point. They cannot provide funding for students who want to go to extracurricular events and have it interpreted there.
Okay, so back to your question, Chair McNally.
Great. So on the subject of disabilities advertising, I'm going to switch gears and make that my first question. This $1,000 advertising line, since we're still talking about this 4 years later, would you be opposed to legislating in the coming weeks specific legislation that requires existing structures, including finance committee, diversity committee, the press office, the chair and vice chair of ASM, communicate with not only McBurney Center, their individual constituents as committees, but also with any group that plans a finance committee event, grant, travel thing to get the word out? Like, why are we still talking about this? And I was just curious to your thoughts on whether or not you plan on doing anything about this in the coming weeks.
Yeah, so one of the problems with ASM too is the difficulty holding people accountable. And the best way to hold, especially leadership accountable, is through stipends. So as for legislation, yes, I mean, I think there should be a minority. I don't know if I would not advise maybe to 4 different positions, but maybe to finance committee chair, you'd amend the description of their job, their duties, saying will inform groups of this fund or of this fund, given that it still exists in years to come. You could have the diversity chair's job, so you can say the same thing, that when they're talking to groups, they are supposed to bring this up as well. And that way they can be held accountable to it. And that would be a much better and cheaper solution than having Steve Howard.
Do you follow?
I do. I want to move now to the general carryover line. It's line 10 under the programming for the new sheet, if you will. I was just curious, what is general carryover and why it costs $4,500?
It's for general carryover.
Can you be more specific?
There is really not any other way to put that other than it is for if we go over in any specific line, it comes out.
Do you have a final question?
I do. I'd like to move down 2 lines of general trainings. And I was curious as to why while $9,000 was approved for last year, the actuals were a dismal $430 the year before. So why we're at that $2,000 mark, kind of the rationale, if you can speak to that.
So I guess, first of all, there's 430 spent, and there was not much spent this year, obviously, on trains yet. So that's why there's not been much spent because the trains simply haven't happened. You can take that for what it's worth and make your own assumptions on it. So the line item this year for just shy of 10 grand, is around 9,700. We took it down to 2,000. I took it down to 2,000 because I didn't want to completely restrict the next session leadership. I didn't want to put it down to $431 or $500. I wanted to leave it at something a little bit in the middle where they're able to still have sufficient trainings. Because clearly we went through 2 years and not even reached $2,000 yet. And if next session decides they don't want to use it, maybe they can knock it down for the 21st session to $1,000.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Why was this rationale used for general trainings and not across the board?
Because general trainings are much more subjective. And they can be used much more widely than, for instance, the ASM recruitment drive, which is much more specific and goal-oriented. Whereas general training, who knows what come, I guess.
Representative, you say that.
Cool. For the programming and student council orientation, do we know how much? Because it says that we spent $1,000, like the actual month, so it went over, and then. But this year we requested 800. How much did we use for that?
Well, we actually haven't had one yet, that's the one this weekend,
Okay.
those were the two retreats, and the grand cost of that's probably gonna be about $40 in snacks, we have it. This, yeah, another shout out to the retreat this weekend for everyone that can possibly make it. Yes, it's in Violet's 40/20, 10 from, I guess, 10 for new representatives, you guys included, and 10:45 for everyone else. That's this weekend, and this is in a classroom on campus. I will buy a few snacks for Joanna on Friday, and let people get lunch themselves. It's going to cost $40. I would actually be okay with reducing this substantially. Yes.
Alright, do you
Sorry,
follow up?
What information? Sorry,
Yes,
this is
I'm
not
going.
a question. Do you have trainers that go to this orientation?
For trainings, we, at least these, trainings will be given by, myself, Chair Belowski, staff members, and also, Diversity Vice Chair Britta Mose. That's for this training in specific, but other times usually just staff and.
And Ellie, thank you. Okay, cool. Next question. Do I have another question?
You have a follow-up and then a final question, so go for it.
My next question is, yeah, computer. Under the computer. What is grant application website support and why did we spend any money on it? And why are we still asking for money if we didn't spend? Yeah.
So, grant application website. I wrote this down and then I didn't take it up here. So, the grant application website support is for the finance committee grants website. That's, if anything goes wrong with that, we need money to fix it. Also, do it informed us that they will be phasing out the current server that they're using, and they'll be using a new server, and it's going to cost somewhere around $4,000 to get that, to update it to that one. So the extra $1,000 is what's wrong with that, and we need to have it fixed. Okay, so that students can access the finance grants.
Do you have a final question?
Yes, I do. What is 21st century India and why are we spending so much money on it?
I would love to talk about that. So, 21st century. So, just gonna pull this up a little bit here.
Reminds me of like the housing, like those like styles.
Yeah, so the division of student life, yeah, so 21st century is charged to all the representatives, and so we have access to like the server that we use and all of that good stuff, all of our computers, our ability to use those computers. It gets charged to us based on the number of staff, and that includes for ASM, that includes our professional staff, all of our ASM student hourlies, all of our leadership procedures stipends, and all of the GSSF student hourlies. So it's a huge number of people. Previously, they weren't charging us for it. They were just like, Division of Student Life was just taking care of our bill, and then we kept adding more and more people to the number of people. And so last year, for 2011-2012, we had budgeted $6,500 because they weren't taking all of it from us. And then they came and asked for the full amount. So they will be asking for $50,955 or more for this year and next year. We cannot. They just kind of take it. So we're budgeting so that we're not under budgeting, and we need to find that $7,000 somewhere else.
Representative Wheelers.
So, the first thing I'm interested in is, again, similarly to this current year, there's no funding for the upkeep party. And so I'm wondering, clearly we had significant issues with the homecoming process when homecoming this year. So I'm interested, have you reached out to those organizations? What's the rationale for not putting money back into the budget to have those problems?
Yeah, so there are, I don't even know how many organizations that get financial grant. Co-sponsoring with an organization means that we have a part in putting it. Homecoming and all campus party
ASM is not involved in putting on the expense. Additionally, if we were to have an actual co-sponsorship, okay, even if we were to have an actual co-sponsorship with those groups, then we have no criteria for saying when we want to co-sponsor this group. So we would just be picking these two and saying these two events are way better than all the other events put on campus. So we're going to go with that and give them a special place in our budget. That's not fair. That's not viewpoint neutral. I know we don't have to be viewpoint neutral, but it is not right to give those two organizations and their events priority over everybody else, especially since we will not have an actual sponsorship of those events. We don't have any of those events. Even if we could work that out, again, why those two are not the different events in our registration organization. So that money is reflected back in finance committee grants like it was last year, because that's really the right way to do it. They should be as responsible for meeting finance committee's deadlines and requirements as every other student organization is.
You follow?
Yes. So I'm also interested, clearly in our body we are discussing this new sustainability committee, and so if it is to pass, what's your process for incorporating the stipend for that chair into the budget? Is that going to be difficult, or will we just do it next week?
That would be actually sort of noticeable. So it's once again, I spoke with, he asked me so, Colin asked me the same thing half an hour ago, and I told him that we would come up. So what we do is just motion amend to add line item for sustainability chair stipend, and in the legislation is 55% tuition, which the increase would be $1,527, so it would be really easy to just add a line item for it.
Do you have a final question?
Thanks.
No? Representative Vander. Representative Vander.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to work things that relate to questions. What is the training and staff?
Definitely. So what I'm familiar with this episode, I was talking to Ryan, and I think I'm wrong, I don't want to ask that, but I believe you're going through a website training right now, or you're taking like an online seminar or something about website hosting. Is that? Oh, I'm sorry, it's not even is that true? Do you want to mention something? Yeah, our staff has in the past taken training about like website support, like maintaining the upkeep of the ASM website. Is that? Oh, you're right. Okay, well. I guess they'll all have that stuff. So I don't know exactly, but I believe in the past I've heard from, I think these are two, that they're having staff who have used it for technology support in particular. And also for general like leadership trainings, especially for like leadership support.
Good follow up?
I'm just curious, because I think staff trainings are really important. But we,
Staff.
yeah.
Just full-time staff fall under the division of students.
Right.
So while being full-time employees, they of course receive professional development and training. And I won't speak to the exact training, but their professional development would take place under the purview of the dean of students and the associate dean of students. So certainly they're trained just like the Center for First-Year Experience staff and some of the leadership involvement and stuff like that.
So I have another question. I guess, right, so I think that brings up, I don't know, I just want to hear you speak to this, because I think it addresses a couple problems, right, in terms of like student autonomy, but also like, I guess I'm curious how there are staff and administration is training our staff. And if administration is training our staff, then why do we have money in the line item to do it? And like, if they're using it for technological support and the dean of students office wants to like train them on everything else, then why can't we just make them do that too? And like,
I don't know the exact answer to that because I'm not super comfortable speaking about staff salaries and.
no, not salaries,
No, I
but
didn't
training.
think it's training, Okay, so why? I'm sorry. What's your question?
Yeah, no, so I'm not talking about salaries at all, I'm strictly talking about the training line item, staff training. Because, like, I do think that we should have more autonomy over the training. But from what I heard you say, is more along the lines, I just want to, like, there's a question, I just want to make sure that it makes sense. So, from what I'm hearing you say, it's like technological training and like, or like technology support, technological. Yes, thank you. So I don't understand why the student office wants to do everything else but that. Why can't we just make them for that?
I honestly don't know. And when I said technical, I honestly don't know that's what it's always used for. Please, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, sorry for the confusion. We haven't specifically did the website training line, but it's fine. I would say that training line in the past has really gone along with what students are looking for. Like in the past, I went to the Midwest Academy for community organizing because 3-4 years ago, that was the direction our students were looking for in their staff. So for instance, you guys were looking for Michael to have further lobbying training or to go to, some, under the state government or under something. So it would be a way for us to continue our professional development. It does sometimes, we do some of the courses we do it, like if our staff is trying to learn a quick course or something like that. But I would say generally it goes along with what the direction of what the students are looking for from us as trainers.
Do you have a final question, Representative Bookmatter?
Yeah, sorry, this is like kind of, I feel like it's kind of awkward. My question is in terms, like, I don't understand why we can't just dictate this to the student's office, like, give them the training that they want unless they turn that over to us. You know what I mean? So, like, figure out how we can, it seems weird. Right?
On point. Our trainings do we get to pick the trainings that the staff gets?
In order to expend any money from the internal budget, the chair, the vice chair, or finance committee chair has to approve of whatever they spend, so, yes.
Yes. So we as council can request a training so the staff can get it, and then they use that money that we're talking about right now, and then that's how that money is used?
I mean, I would assume so. If we all decide that we want to have our staff be trained on something, we can say that, and they will, and then they can educate us. All right, Chief Justice Clark.
Sure. A lot of what I was asked has already been asked and answered, but could you so describe how, so for instance, the staff has obviously a wealth of institutional knowledge within the internal processes. So what do you see as the value of, like I know you were not, you said you were not able to produce the $2,000 training line, but what do you see the value of having any money in the general training line?
I was talking about producing it, spreading out the program to not have
Could you explain how that would be used in the respective?
Yeah, so the idea has been proposed to just eliminate the general training line altogether instead of having this pot that no one's really sure what it's supposed to be used for and clearly has not been used, but instead skipping the middleman and giving it directly to the committees. So taking that $2,000 and splitting it up among finance committee, among shared diversity, university ledge. And so instead of this $2,000 fund just kind of there, once again, skipping the middleman, giving it directly to the committees to use for trainings and allowing more discretion to defer to the committee chairs.
Do you follow?
Yes. How do you anticipate that committee? For instance, even if we were funding $2,000, let's say each committee had $3 or $4,000. How do you anticipate? What do you think they would be acceptable to be spent this?
Sorry.
I mean, if you were to divide the $2,000 program throughout the committees, introducing the 150, like finance, let's say finance, $150 goes to $400. What do you anticipate using the $400 for?
For any of the committees, I mean, I can't speak for the 20th session chairs of the committees, but I mean, I could imagine it being for a specific town hall that may frankly not be the sexiest topic and might need some food to attract some people to come. So I have no idea. It's really up to the discretion, right? It's true. It's up to the discretion of the chair. I don't know exactly, but the point is to allow them to give them the agency to make the decision themselves, to not constrain them too much right now.
Do you have a final question?
So, I think it's appropriate if the, for instance, finance committee had $400 for food money, so they can hold the town hall. I really don't see, so I don't.
Sure, I mean, maybe finance committee doesn't need it. I know Chair Kidd and Martin members are really entirely in joining council. Maybe it'd be more appropriate for these specific grassroots committees and taking that $400 and give it to sustainability committee instead. I mean, it really is once again up to the discretion of those chairs, and I don't want to speak for the 20th session grassroots committee chairs.
Chair McNally.
Yeah, so curious as to why the Nations Board doesn't have any training money, food money, party money, money in general, but more specifically training money.
It hasn't been in past budgets, I did not just take up your line and now.
No, I know. I was curious, can I clarify?
Yes, you may.
Has it ever been in the budget?
I don't think so.
So we've never trained nominations board.
I mean, nominations is trained through, first of all, the carryover. It's actually one of the committees where there usually are people on who were on there before. It's one of the few committees that has that institutional carryover. And it's also something that you just either you learn along the way. You use only so much. It's not, we're not going to outsource someone to give a training, not like a train, but a public affairs training to teach finance community or something.
I mean, I would be perfectly amenable to having a line in there and getting nomination with some HR training. I think that could be good. Thank you. But yeah, I looked at the last, over the summer I looked at like the last 5 years of ASM internal budgets, because I had too much time on my hands. But it was not in the last 5 years of budgets to my knowledge. It could have been before that. But yeah, I mean, that was like I was talking about with splitting up that general programming line, which was set up between the 5-letter New York Sustainability Committee that is added, and then non-board.
Alright, so plan of information representative Seta.
We don't have training for non-board.
No, we do not. Point of information director Gardner.
She is a further.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does the next staff for somebody train now?
Yes, but this year there were 2 people on NOMS board that were on NOMS board last year, so we kind of did some of that, I being one of those people.
So the Division of Student Life also offers HF training as well.
That too.
Can I speak to my own committee in this division? So we do training in accordance with our criteria. So when we sit down and we go through all the criteria before we do hiring, and I also have a set of standing rules, just professional courtesies and details, if you will, that are set at the beginning of the year. I guess my whole point in all of this is I'd like to see some more strategy training for kind of how to target student groups we don't always see on council, and also talk about different ways to like get law students to actually care about student council enough to submit an application. So that's really what I was getting at the whole NOMS board. Can I have my second question? Is that okay?
I'm gonna point of information director Gardner, and then I'll get back to you.
Yes. Could we be forwarded the last 5 budgets, or at least we be forwarded the last 5 internal budgets that you talked about? Do you have?
Yeah, I got them from Rich, so I will make sure I send that to them.
I'd love to.
Alright, awesome. Follow up, Chair now.
Point of information.
Yes.
Could you yield to, or you can answer yourself, is the HR training free that the university is willing to provide?
Chair Brooker?
To my knowledge, it is free. I directed GSSF leaders to return to that. You can talk to Joanna, but she helped them with it. But I believe it was free. If I'm wrong, my bad. Thank you.
Alright, follow up, Chair McNally.
Yes. So I wanted to go back to this advertising line for disabilities. Would you be amenable to, if we were to compile this legislation that really did specifically stated who was responsible for informing who, and kind of mandating through people who have stipends that could be reprimanded through their stipend, if you will. If we were to do that and pass that, could we move this, would you be amenable to moving this $1,000 to the actual disability fund? So we can actually use that money for the people who have the disabilities instead of advertising when we should be able to get to them. So if we were to fix it through legislation, could we move the would you be amenable to moving the advertising money to the actual disabilities fund?
I think we should still leave some advertising money there.
We should, and then once again, I don't know how much it would actually cost to advertise it, so I don't even think it would be necessary. But if I'm wrong, I would love for someone to somehow, but I really don't think it would cost any money to advertise it.
Final question?
I do, since we've established that it's your own Chair, Vice Chair Giannopoulos' Chair Kids' purview to dispense all money from the internal budget, are you planning on dispensing or having an advertising campaign or delegating that advertising of this disability money, or is it going to be spent all this year, or is it just kind of going to sit?
Well, as Director Gardner said, I imagine the line of communication is open and they are very strong. So and that's probably something to say advertising doesn't need to happen, at least to McBurney, at least as of now, because it already has. And for, yes, so it had been opened up already.
Director Gardner.
Motion to go out of rules. Second.
Okay. Well, we're almost done with this anyhow. So I guess there's a motion to go out of rules in a second. All those in favor of going out of rules, we say aye.
Point of information.
Representative Wickbander, point of information, yes.
Do I speak to my motion?
Sure.
I just have some other questions, and this is the budget, and this is the Q&A time. And I was really hoping that I could ask some more questions. So I hope people.
Are you just asking for another speaking turn of questions?
Well, yeah, but there's other people that want more speaking turns.
Okay, great. Who's second?
Point of information.
Yes.
Could we do senatorial questions and moving out of rules to kind of keep a format while still allowing the representatives to ask other questions?
I would say no, just because we can keep this going and people can ask their questions in a freestyle format and still get their point across. I think that's fair.
Point of information. Outside of senatorial questioning and while in rules, is it true that you are only allowed a
Well,
total of 2
senatorial questioning is not in Robert's rules, so I'm going to rule that dilatory, but you can have more than 2 speaking turns if you move to go out of rules and have that. So there was a motion and a second. All those in favor of going out of rules, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Oh, okay. We're going to have more than 1 speaking turn. You can ask questions. Like Director Gardner will be the next person to speak. And you can ask questions. You've already asked 2 sets of questions. Is that clear? Okay, Director Gardner.
Thank you. So I want to kind of just ask a more general question for you in terms of this budget as a whole. I think in the formulation of these budgets, it shows a lot about you as a chair and kind of where your vision is for ASM and what you value and hope to see accomplished. Could you speak some to when you were formulating this budget, where you saw ASM going and where you saw the student body being served best, and how you used that against the changes?
I would love to. So I definitely am a person who is relatively fiscally conservative. And by that I mean I spend money as responsibly as possible. When I do spend money, I try to be frugal with it. I try to make sure that when I spend $1, it's exactly here. It's spent wisely. I really do. So in making this budget, a lot of it, like I said, was understanding the financial needs of students. I've been in this organization for 3 years now, and I understand and lobbied on behalf of lower tuition at the federal level. I've done it. So I definitely understand the concerns of students of how much tuition is and how much site fees are. And keeping that in mind, I really tried to do the best that ASM could with what we decided to spend money on. So that's why you see these service that for students. We still have the student, one of the best examples is the student order fair co-sponsorship. That is something that almost 10,000 students use in the spring or in the fall, and I finished 5,000 to 6,000 use in the spring. That's a huge thing that ASM provides for students. As a student government, it's our obligation to provide the service to students to help them out. And for me, another big one that hasn't really been brought in questions yet, and I kind of hope it happens, discuss open forum is Varsity Day. So for me, Varsity Day, The benefits of varsity day are twofold. One is for students. It's for the seniors who are graduating, saying congratulations on your graduation, wish you best of luck. It's for the undergraduates, for the graduates who are still continuing on, saying we look forward to seeing you next fall. And the other one is for the university as a whole. I've reached out to Paul Bonners, the president of the WAA, Dean Bergblum, Dean Helmkamp, Sarah Matthews, president of the union, Neil Damron, the DLS programming chair. I reached out to the VP of programming for the union, I reached out to the senior vice president, secretary, and treasurer, and everyone wants it to happen. And for me, the benefit of university is to increase the national visibility of this university. By bringing in a high-profile speaker, we're able to have these people come to the university and not only inspire students, but be there in recognition of this university, give the university more national clout and notoriety on a national, if not international level, which we already have. And I want to see that increase. So I guess without staying on my soapbox too much, I really see the fundamental job of the student government to spend money as responsibly as possible while still providing those services for students, while still trying to further the interest in the university, and while maintaining some level of funding for those students that is reasonable. And I believe that the benefits of Varsity Day in particular and student order co-sponsorship, you see these funds that go here that spend some money, but the benefits outweigh this marginal cost tenfold at least. The potential benefits are incredibly high and so beneficial to me that this just seems like a very simple thing that people can get behind and will remember. In 20 years, I would remember if it's the year of innovation. I would love to bring Bill Gates this year. I would remember that Bill Gates came spring of my graduating year. I would remember that. I wouldn't remember the ASM mental health campaign in particular. I would remember what it did to me. It would help me out in life. These are things that are really hard. I've seen this student government work. In 3 years, there are very few things where you can. I've said this to people I've met with, and I'm saying to the others I think of this year. There are very few things that you can just snap your fingers and accomplish in the student government. If I could put every single campaign and every single initiative in this internal project, I would. Free varsity is something we can all accomplish, and we can all use and get behind as bachelors. And this budget reflects that and my passion in the student government as a whole. And Ellie can answer too.
Thank you. So my answer to that question would be, so obviously my wheelhouse is psych fees and making sure that psych fees are not any part of prohibiting a student from going to the school because of affordability. So my number one concern when I'm doing my job is that students can go to school here and psych fees do not factor into a student having to say, I can't afford to go to university. That is a problem for me if anyone ever has to say that. However, I'm also very about psych fees providing wonderful services. My committee sees, not my committee, I don't like to say that because that's a good, SMC, which is a wonderful committee, sees somewhere between like $42 million of psych fees in a year. So we see 42 million wonderful things that psych fees do. So when I'm looking at this budget, when I was working on it, what I saw was what I think students want is for ASM to work its butt off to provide great things for not very much of their money. Because students have to pay a lot of money to this university, to psych fees, to ASM. So if I made cuts ever, it wasn't because I was saying this is values less than this. It was because I was saying I think we can do some of this stuff for free, and I think that we should be putting a little more pressure on our student leaders to do things in a cheaper way if possible. If you're gonna buy food for an event, buy something that's not name brand, buy an off brand, buy like your great value stuff. That's what I do with my money. So I just really think that a lot of these lines, I think we can really easily do wonderful things with a little less money if we try harder, and if we were, kind of backed into that corner where we said, like a lot of students are backed into a corner and can't afford great things, so they buy less great things, or they find great things that are cheaper. So I wanted to kind of back ASM into a corner where we said, all right, we're gonna have to work a little harder to provide the services we do at the same quality for maybe a little less money. Maybe we don't buy pizza for that event. Maybe we just work harder to get the word out and bring in more students. Maybe we call one of our friends and say, hey, can you bring some friends to our town hall? So when I was looking at it, I wasn't trying to say, here's what I think next year's student council should do with its money. I was trying to say, student council next year, ASM next year should try a little harder to save some students money and still provide great things. And I really think that that's possible. I'm going to do the same thing that's with student budget. We're going to penny pinch all over the place. So I don't want anybody who's you know, that what they really care about, if that was cut a little bit in this budget, you can change that, absolutely. I don't get to do that. This was just what I thought. But I really think you have to think a little harder about. I hate when people say it's just $100 in the giant, you know, group of 42 million psych fees. It's only $100. That's not a big deal, but that's $100 of students' money. You know, I always qualify it as students' money, and it adds up really fast. So I guess I honestly was trying to back this into a corner a little bit. So we have to try hard to spend less. And I understand some people might not like that. I'm actually not really that fiscally conservative. But when I'm talking about students' money, it's hard not to be when I know a lot of people that can't afford to go to school here. So that was where I was coming from. I wasn't trying to like have a vision for student council next year. I was trying to say spend less money because students can't afford it.
Do you follow?
Yes. What do you see? Thank you for this vision. I want to direct this more to the teacher worker. What do you see as SSFC's role in altering the budget that will eventually be approved by this budget?
Yeah. So I think SFC really is not. We're not gonna. We do things in a viewpoint neutral manner. So it's not going to be, do we think students will like this? That's not how we look at things. We look at things like, is this a reasonable amount for the goals set? So it's going to be hard for us because a lot of what we see right now are student organizations who can say, here's exactly what we want to do with this money. For student council, it's kind of hard because we don't know who's going to be here next year, and GSSFs don't either, but they have a very specific goal. Student council might not. It's kind of hard for you guys to say, here's exactly what we want to do with this sum of money. So SFC is going to have a little harder time deciding what's reasonable and what's not. It's not going to be cut everything to actuals. That's not what SFC is about. We don't do that with everything in every budget. That's not how we work. But we look to see if there's places where this is an unreasonable amount, where this is exorbitant. We could do this for cheaper. There's not a lot of stuff in here that applies to that. If you're asking for a whole bunch of airfare and we're asking too much for that, we could really have an easy time of saying that's not reasonable. But that kind of stuff isn't in this budget so much. We're just going to look at what it's really about what is reasonable. It's not about what students care about. That's not our job. That's student council's job. So it's not going to be, we don't like housing services. We're going to cut that. That's not what we do.
Your final question?
Yes. That's good. I want to ask you a question as a member of SSFC. I know you don't vote.
Yeah.
As SSFC chooses someone who would vote.
Mm-hmm.
If, say, a budget was forwarded that allowed, this is a totally hypothetical situation, that last year, say they spent $50 for, I'll use an example, it's hypothetical for sustainability. So say sustainability committee existed, and they spent $50 last year. And then the chair, as in his role as a leader in this organization, shaping the future of this organization, said, we would like to spend more on sustainability committee and allow them to have more flexibility to do more. So we're going to increase their budget to $300. So it doesn't reflect the actuals, and in terms of actuals, it's actually quite unreasonable because they only spent $50. However, the vision of the chair was that he or she would like to see more investment in that area. He or she would like to see that area expanded. And how would you, I guess, compensate for that difference between being responsible, I guess, or being scrutinizing a budget based on its actual spending and its anticipated spending versus the goals of leadership and the discretion that Chair Pawlowski might have over saying, we want to spend more on this because it's important to our vision for ASM.
Yeah, so that actually happens a lot where we have groups that spent a minimal amount for an actual and then are asking for more because they have a plan to spend that amount. We generally ask what their plan is for the current year. If they have money for the current year, how are you using that? What sort of ideas, even though you might not be using the leadership position, what sort of ideas do you think might come up that you could use that money for? I am more than happy to schedule a time in the agenda when we do the internal budget for all of the committee chairs to come and talk about your programming lines and what you think could be done with those. I would be thrilled to have you all from the associate talk about that, because that's what they're going to want to hear. If there's no plan for it, it's going to be kind of hard. And like I said, you guys aren't planning for it because you're not going to be in leadership, in these same leadership positions next year, probably. Maybe something, I don't know. But, so, I think it's not going to be about, they always mention $50, but you only have $50 next year. If you have a reasonable plan and you can say, here's how I want to spend this, here's how I think this could be used, here's how we're spending it this year, I think that SSC sees that as very, I think we see that as reasonable. I do. And just judging from how decisions have gone this year so far in SSC, people are very open to, if you have a plan for using it, we're not going to just, we're not going to say we don't believe you.
Tristan?
In relation to the last point, I'm making a suggestion that the onus is on each chair of the committee to prove that SSFC the value of their work even after the budget is submitted and the bodies between the chair of the committee.
No, I don't think it's proving the value of the committee. I think it has to be somewhat about how you're going to use the money. I honestly don't believe that it's going to be like we're going to go nuts and cut everything out. I think Chair Bolowski can definitely speak to the necessity of all of those lines. You don't have to come and podcast with me, but it is a little bit about proving that you're going to be able to spend this effectively.
You follow up?
Yes, I do. My problem is there should not be a connection between the committee's ability to spend money responsibly and the ability of that chair to attend an SSFC meeting to make sure that a handful of students that have no idea most likely what the actions of that committee are doing to affect the complete funding of that organization. Do you think, and you both can answer this, that perhaps it would be common sense to have those folks attend this meeting, see this discussion, or if perhaps it violates